Hello, everyone, and welcome to my lunchtime chat that is sponsored by Our Black Hair Matters. And today I am going to provide you with your blueprint to finding the right products. So with so many different products on the market, it's important for you to make informed decisions about what is best for you. So today I will go over what you should look out for to ensure that you are buying the right products that work. Also, we'll talk about how clinical studies or why they are important, and then how to tell if you are being fed basically a bunch of bull. So just in case you do not know who I am and you're new to the platform, let me just take some time to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Crystal Porter, and I'm a hair scientist. This is a live online broadcast platform that is dedicated to elevating the Black hair care industry and empowering consumers and hair professionals with education that is driven and backed by scientific research. So before we get started, I would like to know who is out there this morning. And so I'd also like to know where you're watching from. So if you are a hair practitioner, put the number 1 in the comments. If you are a consumer, put the number 2. And if you are a researcher or a scientist, just like I am, put the number 3. Then also, please share this broadcast. Do not be stingy. And invite 5 people who you know will really benefit from the information that's going to be provided. So if you are frustrated with the lack of information available when it comes to caring for your hair, or you wasted a lot of money, time, and resources just trying to figure things out on your own, you are definitely in the right spot. And that is why we created the Our Black Hair Matters movement. And then one last thing before we get started, I have put together a valuable resource, and it is 3 biggest mistakes to avoid when caring for your hair. And if you would like to get it, you can make sure that you put in bit.ly OBHM consult, and you will be able to receive that for free. All right, so let's take a look and see who is out there. I understand that sometimes I don't have the ability to see everything and everybody, but hello, Renee. Thank you for joining. Taria is here. Nikisha, hey, good to see you. And let's see who else is here. Trying to scroll down. All right. Ani, so hey, Andrea, thanks for coming. And Chantel, hey, watching from the airport. Okay, awesome. You are Miss Traveler, so I understand, but thanks for taking time to tune in. All right, so let's go ahead and get started because there are just so many people. Every time I'm out and people hear about my expertise, they're like, oh my God, I need to know what products are right for me. And my heart goes out because I know, everybody's struggling, trying to figure out what is right. So I want people to be able to make informed decisions. So one of the things that I always respond to when it comes to that question is, it depends on what's going on. And there are a number of factors that play a role. And so, why are you really unhappy or wanting to make a change? That is really important because sometimes you just want a particular look, which is more, I would say, more aesthetics. But if you're having like some real problems, like you're having breakage or hair loss, that's a little different. And that, in my opinion, requires an expert to actually help out with that. So one, identifying, what problems you're having. The other thing you have to consider is like, what are you doing now and what do you use? So if you are heat styling your hair, which I'm not opposed to that at all, as long as you do it in a way that's conducive for you and your hair type, then it's okay to do that. But having that information may play a role into why you're having some of the problems you're having. So just knowing what you're doing, but then also how often you are doing it. So if there's a process that you do, like I said, heat styling or you're blow drying, or even if you use something like foam rollers, all of that is going to really make your hair perform in a particular way or not perform in a particular way, depending upon what's going on with you. But also your products, like, Are you using products all the time that aren't necessarily conducive? And I see some people, it just says Facebook user, so I don't know what name you have. If you give StreamYard permissions on Facebook for you to be revealed, then I will be able to see your name. So for those who are saying hello, I see that you're saying hello. I just don't have a name, so I apologize for that. So just wanted to, continue and talk about some of the things that we need to be aware of for you to really get an understanding about what you need to do. So we talked about why you're unhappy. And we're talking about, what is your hair history, meaning, how often do you use products or how often you do different processes to your hair. Oh, hey, Rosetta, thanks for joining. And then we also are talking about like how often. So what do you use and how often? But then do you have any known sensitivities? Because there are some products that contain ingredients that are safe to the majority of the population, but you may be sensitive to it. So that's something that you need to be aware of as well. And then, the ultimate question is like, what do you ultimately want to achieve? There are a number of people, like for example, when my daughter went natural, she wanted her hair to do like what my hair does, but her density, meaning, the amount of fibers that's on her scalp, is not the same as me. And so she's not able to achieve the look in the same way. And she has found something that works for her, but having unrealistic expectations is something that we need to keep in check as well. So, so these are things that we need to consider before you move forward in purchasing, just identifying exactly what's going on. And a lot of people just have that feeling that I'm unhappy and I don't know what I need to do. But if you can at least narrow it down, that will really help. Now, one of the things that is really out there on the blogosphere, people are talking about it and writing about it, is safe products. And I have to tell you that a lot of the bigger brands, I always talking about the big three, right? So we have the L'Oreals, we have the Unilevers, and then we have the Procter & Gamble products. For those big corporations, those products are safe. They do a lot of testing and they can't afford, as they say, too big to fail. They can't afford to not do their due diligence and making sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. Oh, hey, Crystal, I see you joined as well. Thanks for joining. And Taria says, yes, I think that's the biggest question, how to set realistic expectations. Yeah. And I have to be honest, while I support small businesses because I am a small business owner, I know that a lot of people who are starting to make products don't really understand what they need to do in order to be safe. And so these are some of the questions or some of the guidance that I want to actually help guide people who make products, but also inform just consumers who purchase the products, what they need to be aware of. Because once we set the precedent in terms of what we want in demand from manufacturers, whether they be small or big, the better we have a chance of getting it, because people are like, oh, that's what people need. I have to make sure that I adhere to these particular standards. And hey, how you doing, Alyssa? Thanks for joining. Nikisha says bingo, thanks for agreeing. And then you say, oh, say effective and safe. Absolutely, that is really important. And so I want to kind of arm you with some things to be on the lookout for. And so one of the things that is becoming more, I would say, popular is having like a validation for your products, right? So there are some seals and some, so just an indication that you have done something new. And not all of them are really worth anything, but some of them are trying to really, elevate and make sure that there are standards that are adhered to. So I want to make you knowledgeable of that. But one of the things that I want to bring to your attention is that there's something called GMP certification. And that means that whoever is making the product is actually doing good manufacturing practices. That's what GMP stands for, good manufacturing practices. And so this is something that is important for any manufacturer. And I actually went on the FDA website. So this is something that is not hidden. I don't have special knowledge, but this is just a checklist. And so for those who want to be certified, they can go through an inspection. And the inspection, I mean, everything is written here in terms of what is needed. And so it really is common sense things. If you are in the sciences, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you learn as an undergraduate that there are things that you need to practice in the laboratory just to be a good scientist. And so I say all that to say, this is nothing new to scientists, but for people who are kind of new in the space and don't really have an appreciation for what we as scientists do, this is something. So I'm not going to go into all the details about all the guidelines, but I do want to indicate some of the things that they state, and so you'll understand why it is important. So you have to have buildings and facilities that, you know, meet the code and standards to make sure that it's safe. You have to make sure that the equipment is clean and functioning. You got to have personnel who knows who know what they're doing, who are clean. You got to make sure that the hair is out the way so you don't have any cross contamination. You have to make sure that the raw materials have are properly labeled, and make sure that you have all of the background information about that. You got to have laboratory controls, making sure that if there are lot numbers or sample numbers, that everything is in its proper place. You have to keep good records. You have to label. You have to be sure that if there are any complaints, that you have a way to log that. And then they have a section called Other. And Other is basically making sure if you want to voluntarily register to be certified, that that's something that you can do. But this is something that everyone should be aware of. And what I find is a lot of the small businesses have absolutely no idea what GMP is. And that is a problem. If you ask a manufacturer, so I was talking about small businesses, right? And like I said, I'm an advocate for them, but they have to make sure that they become knowledgeable before they just start selling products. And some small businesses or companies, or even hair practitioners for that matter, because a lot of professionals are having their own line, and whether they choose to buy out and private label or have someone manufacture it for them and then they slap their own lashes, but they put their own label in it to, you know, make it more personalized, or they hire somebody to formulate for them, which is a little different, because sometimes you may be very specific in what you want a product to do. So you reach out and you have someone in the industry to make your product. Then that's a little bit different than them having something on the shelf that they have tested and then they package it for you. But either way, you want to make sure that that manufacturer understands what GMP is, because if they've never heard of it, that's a problem. And if you are having any of your products made, this is something you want to ask whomever is making it. And alarms should go off if they're like, what is that? Then you're like, it makes me cringe. But that's something that you need to be aware of. All right, I have a couple of more Facebook users. Your name isn't coming up, unfortunately. Nadia, thank you about, oh yeah, and Nadia actually says certificate of analysis. That was next. So yeah, you're ahead of me, Nadia, but that is extremely important. And for those of you who don't know what a certificate of analysis is, that is a certificate that you can get from the manufacturer that lets you know that they've done testing to make sure that it has the ingredients that they say are on the label and that they are in the quantities that they say they should be in. So that is what is extremely important. So make sure that you yeah, if you get your products made, have a certificate of analysis, because that is like you doing your due diligence to make sure that they're doing their due diligence. Hey, Donisha, thanks for coming. And then Nadia says, you're proud to say that you went through the whole process, and holistic practitioners of trichology cell food line has all the requirements. Yes, yes. Thank you for doing your due diligence. There are so many small businesses who have no idea. Hey, Landria, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. So yeah, these are things that's important. I think these are things that are important. So the other thing that you need to be aware of, you have to have stability testing, or make sure that the product that you're purchasing has stability testing. And the reason why that's important is because you want to make sure that it has long-lasting performance. And what I mean by that is, if things like phase separate and then it's tested when it's actually stable, then the way that you may get the benefits from the ingredients they may be different if it's not stable. So you want to make sure that the product is stable. Then the other thing you want to make sure is that microbial testing is done, because you don't want unwanted bugs growing in your formula. And it's actually easy to do, especially if you have something that's water-based. You need to make sure that as it sits on the shelf, that it's not sitting there and just growing well, a lot of people say all bacteria is bad, and that's not true. But you don't want it growing anything that is going to be bad. Oh, Brianna's here. Okay, thank you for coming, Brianna. And let's see. Oh, certifications. So nowadays, there are a lot of products that have these seals, right? Approval seals. And I think that's a good idea, but making sure that whomever is responsible for issuing those seal of approvals or certifications, make sure you understand exactly what it is they do. There is a certification called Made Safe. And so they have their own directory of ingredients that they feel, okay, you shouldn't be using those. And anyone who's into the regulation of cosmetics know that every year you have to be up on everything that's good and bad, or whatnot. And so a lot of times you depend upon your raw ingredients provider to get that information. But sometimes if they don't do their due diligence, then it's a problem. So just make sure that whatever chain you're using when it comes to your products, that you are aware what can and cannot be used. There's also something called the EWG, which is the Environmental Working Group. And they also say that they advocate for the consumer as well. So while I'm not necessarily, advocating for these two particular groups that have certification processes, what I want you to know is that they do say that they are making sure that everything is safe. But one of the things that I know for a fact for some of these organizations is they tend to what's called cherry pick. And what I mean by cherry pick is they will take one sentence out of a journal article, let's say. And when they take out that one sentence, it makes it seem like something is bad when in actuality it's not proven to be bad. And so you have to get the whole context in terms of what it is they're talking about in the study. And I know that some of these working groups or some of these organizations tend to cherry pick. And so you want to make sure you do your research on whomever is giving the certification as well. All right. Are there any questions based on any information that I've given so far? Because what I want to do right now is kind of go over some of the things that I think are important, like, what you should look out for to ensure that you're buying the right products that work, right? And so put your questions in the chat. And remember, as you join, let me know who you are. You said, thank you for that reminder. Always good to get context of the information shared. Yes. And you wouldn't believe how people just randomly pick things to like feed on their own narrative, and we see evidence of that in life in general, you know. So from politics, and sometimes even on the job, people have their own agendas, right? And so you want to make sure that you get all the information and you have a trusted source. All right, so in terms of what you should look out for, so the products. Let's talk about products in terms of the type of the product and then the amount used. Like, for example, if you have something that is marketed to be anti-frizz, you know, a lot of times there are extensive tests done to make sure that they can actually have that claim for preventing frizz. But in actuality, depending upon your hair type and depending upon how much of the product you use, sometimes it may or may not give you the benefit that you want. So just be aware in terms of how much it should be used, but also for the particular hair type. And I'll talk about that in a moment. The other thing is, you know, is there data available? You know, are there clinical studies and results that they can talk about to give you some reassurance that it is going to perform the way that they say? That is extremely important. There is no reason why a company who sells a product should not be able to give you data behind it, because if they're making a claim, that means that they should have studied it. And if they haven't studied it, then they shouldn't be making that claim. So make sure that there is some information, even if it's just a survey and, you know, they polled consumers in terms of what it is they thought and what the opinion was, you know, that is extremely important. The other thing is, you know, so there are it's a lot of information on YouTube and, you know, with people blogging recommendations. So if someone gives you a recommendation, you know, just ask them exactly what it did and how much they used, what order in which they actually combined the ingredients when they styled their hair. All of that is important, right? And so what works for one person may not work for another. So just, you know, making sure that you get all the information. But I like recommendations. If people are having success with something, a lot of times, you know, people value their own reputation. And so they would give a recommendation based on, you know, something that is true for them. But keep that into perspective. Now, why clinical studies are important. So I am definitely a proponent for clinical studies, and here's the reason why. My quest is to elevate the industry, and right now I feel that we are doing 20th century practices in the 21st century. So we really need to level up and get with the program. There are a lot of advancements that have happened, and I don't think that the industry is really monopolizing on it as they should. And so we need to start getting data, start reporting data. And I think transparency is really key. And there is no reason not to do that. Before and after pictures just isn't enough anymore. I'm tired of seeing them. And I know a lot of people, you know, it provokes the emotion. You know, people are like, oh yeah, that's what I want my hair to do. But before and after pictures without having data behind it, or even if you quantify it, you know, it's just important to get that data. Also, I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of recirculation of the same before and after picture for different companies or different people who are like trying to say that they're helping people, and that's unethical, but it happens. So that without data, I'm like, don't really care about that. So we as consumers should really hold them accountable. And so if we say we want clinical studies and we want to know what's the percentage of people who actually saw success, or how efficacious is this particular product. And when you do clinical studies, you have access to that information. You have access to it. And so if we as consumers start demanding it and asking those questions, then they can't help but to say, oh, this is something I definitely have to do because that's what's required now. So let's, you know, start to change those standards. So also the hardcore data means that companies have done their due diligence. And so that's what we're about, leveling up. So let's do it. And then it also makes having the standards the norm. I just kind of talked about that, but making sure that companies know that we feel that it's important to have because we want to be in the know. We have someone that says, what's the best way to do client studies? Yeah. So that is what my company does, Main Insights. I am determined to make sure that the small businesses have as much of a chance as the big companies. And so I do clinical studies to help small businesses because I think it's important. And I'm determined to make sure that small businesses can thrive and compete. So contact me for that. And Taria says, I have seen that tool, stock images. I think you're talking about the before and afters. Yes, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of people who just, doctor up images. And so, there are unethical people out there. And that is why you need to be informed so you can see behind all that. So that's a great transition into, how you can tell if you're being, fed some bull, right? Bunch of bull. And there are a lot of tactics out there now. And so I want to bring some to light so that you can be aware, this doesn't seem right. And if you have any questions, if you are a member of the Our Black Hair Matters group on Facebook, just ask a question. That is really what I'm here for. I'm here to make sure that things are transparent. So if you have any questions, even after I give, these examples, then you can always just ask, right? Okay, so one thing my husband and I always talk about, and we'll see a commercial and they'll throw out this like sciencey type term. And so while I try to avoid putting companies on the spot. So while I'm not going to use an example of what exists, I will provide you with something that is similar. So if you have like a technical or sciencey word, it may sound cute and a little catchy, but a lot of times if that's all they have to stand on, then it really is not really worth their weight. And so, for example, if you have ingredient that's supposed to make hair strong and they have something that's called like strengthazone or strengthazine, that's something that is just a marketing ploy. They know that people want to feed on or get something that sounds like, oh, it's going to strengthen my hair, it has this particular ingredient. Don't be bamboozled unless they say, okay, we named it this because the data shows that it actually makes the hair, and I'm just throwing this out here, like 5 times stronger, which is probably not true, but say they have that claim. You want to make sure that they have the data to back it up. Also, they may have that sciencey seal that I was talking about, so it's certified. Just make sure that you do your homework to make sure, because it may not be validated. They just may have, just the marketing seal on there, but it's nothing to stand on. Also, they say that they're science-based, but they only reference like the ingredients. And this is huge. I see this a lot. So what they do is they say, oh, we have all these clinical studies. And they'll even have like a link to the clinical study, but they're banking on the majority of people not going to click on it, or they're not going to even read it. Because if you read the reference, a lot of times you can see that it's talking about an ingredient and not the actual product itself. So when they say it's clinically studied or clinically based, sometimes it can be misleading because the ingredient that they may put in may have some research on it. But when it comes to research, and this is a whole nother talk, but all ingredients aren't created equal either. So just like hair isn't created equal. If you buy an ingredient from one particular company, it may not, a lot of times, it's not going to have the same properties or perform the same as the same exact ingredient from a different company. And that's because they have different specifications. The place that they source it from may not be the same. The way they process it and actually going through and making the product may not be the same. There are a lot of different variables that can play a role into why the ingredient is the way it is. So just having a reference about the ingredient isn't enough. You want to make sure that it's enough of the ingredient that has whatever study on it that's positive. You want to make sure that it is effective in the product as it stands. So having research on the product itself, not necessarily the ingredient, is something that you want to look out for. And then we talked about this a lot, and so you can tell that my hashtag is show me the data, because if they don't have the data to back up the claims, then it really is a moot point. You know, data is king. And then the last thing I want to talk about is they don't have data that comes from the population that they're marketing to. And this is huge. I've been to a number, or remotely have attended a lot of different scientific conferences in hair, and just trying to stay abreast on what is new, particularly with hair of African descent or hair from people of African descent. And it's just not going fast enough, which is why I just ended our fundraiser. Angela Ellington, who is a dear friend and colleague, she came up with the idea. She was like, you know what, we keep talking about, we want to, you know, do this stuff. And we have some things that we do together, but we have some really big ideas. And we were like, oh, if only we had more funding. So we just ended our fundraiser. And so it was awesome to be able to have some money towards a lot of the ideas that we have. But one of the things that we want to do, and thank you to Ria for saying congrats, really appreciate that. But one of the things that is a big problem, especially when it comes to people of African descent, is there just isn't enough data out there or research being done on our hair. And there are a number of reasons for that. But to us, there is no reason why our hair shouldn't be researched. We both come from the L'Oreal Institute for Ethnic Hair and Skin Research. And when we worked there, there was a lot of research being done. Now, of course, we had the resources of being in industry, but now we have like all these ideas and we want to move forward with that. And so you would be surprised when you ask the question about, okay, you have this data and you have this claim, but do you actually know about what it does on kinky, coily, curly hair, however way you want to describe it? And a lot of companies say that they have no idea. They just think that because it responds, or because Caucasian hair or Asian hair, because it responds in a particular way, that it must work for our hair as well. But we have different needs. We have data that shows that. Angela and I have co-authored in different book chapters. So we have that information that's known. All hair is not created equal from individual, but also when you break it up into the different ethnic groups as well. So this is something that is extremely important. And I bet you, even with the bigger companies, a lot of times they don't do research on people that originate from the continent of Africa. Now, may it be first generation or 10th generation, a lot of times they just have not been able to do that work, and it's important. We need to hold them accountable. All right, so are there any questions? I want to make sure that I address your help you out with whatever your needs are. And so are there any questions about like a particular brand that you have a question about? And there are so many products out there. I can't keep up with all the products that are out there. And now people are private labeling. And so, just make sure that you get the information, just ask those questions. And I'm just going to have to put together another resource to make it available for those who are part of Our Black Hair Matters movement, so that you can, have that. So if you want to, make sure that whomever you want to purchase from is doing that, especially if they're charging a whole lot of money. I'm trying to provide the services for a very low amount compared to how much it typically costs. So just, it is no excuse. Reach out to me if you need the data, and I will even help you to promote your brand, because I am an advocate for that. Now, the other thing is, I want to make sure that if you have problems with your hair and you are like, you know what, I don't have time to be doing that. One of the things, and I'm really excited about it, and those of you who follow me on YouTube probably saw it, but me and my team, and these are professionals who have been vetted to make sure that not only have they gone through training, but they also understand exactly what's going on and they won't lead people astray. One of the things we did was have our photo shoot, and so that was really fun. And we have this booklet. I'm gonna hold it up. This is my personal booklet, but it's pretty thick. It's a lot of information in here. There are studies. So these are products. So anything that we recommend, we are either actively getting data for, or we have proof. The proof is in the pudding that there are data, there's data and literature that supports how effective things are. So I say all that to say it's important for, I'm talking this and I'm talking about, how people should do it, but that's something that's very important for me and anybody else who's affiliated with me. So, hey, Elaine, thanks for joining. You said, what's the size budget, small companies for testing? So it really depends on how many products they want tested. And the budget size really depends upon, like, for example, for my team, there are those who are certified to do studies on their own. And so when you have that certification to be able to do research studies on human beings, then that decreases the cost for having to have someone who is certified to be able to do that. So they can do it on their own. So that greatly decreases the amount. And that's like, I would say under $10,000 if you go about just doing it on your own, because you're certified, because you're able to do a lot of the legwork yourself. However, if you're not, then it goes higher from there. Someone asked, can you speak on my thoughts on the over-the-counter brand? Oh, Cantu. Oh, I don't know. I have not had the opportunity to ask every single brand, or do my own research to reach out to the company to ask if they've done their due diligence. I just haven't had time to do that. I know Cantu is a brand that actually a lot of people use them. So in terms of the tactile properties, or what I call the aesthetics, sometimes a lot of people like the aesthetics because they keep buying it. But in terms of whether or not they do their due diligence, I apologize, I do not know. I can tell you that there have been some companies that I've reached out to, and it doesn't go well. The more you probe and the more they can't get those answers, man, they just shut down. And so that's why we have the movement here, because I can't do this by myself. That's why I have my team. My team can't do it alone either. So we all need to take responsibility and make sure that we ask these questions. But the other thing is, if you are having difficulties and you need help, I do have my team available. My website is almost there. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure by the end of the week, you'll be able to go on my main insights. That's MANEINSIGHTS.com. You'll be able to go to that website and actually find resources. So if you have individual questions or help, my team will be able to help you. Taria asked, is there a way for consumers to know what percentage of a particular ingredient will make it effective? Great question. For example, aloe vera. What percentage of aloe vera needs to be in the product to realize the benefits marketed? Yeah, now that's a good question. And so this was years ago. This had to have been close to 5 years ago. I was at a conference Actually, it was hosted by the Ohio region of the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. So they have a chapter in Ohio, and I was an invited guest there. And one of the actual presentations was talking about how the formula itself will dictate how some of the ingredients will or will not be effective. So it's not as simple as you just saying, oh, I include this ingredient. You have to include the ingredient, but make sure that the system that you have or the formula itself is made up in such a way that the availability of the ingredient will show its benefits. So that is a little tricky, but that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love Angela for what she does. She's so experienced. She knows all these caveats. She knows how to make formulas that are going to be effective. And so and she and I use the same analogy when it comes to cooking. Sometimes when, you have an experienced cook, they know how to tweak something just to, make that flavor come out. It's the exact same thing with formulating. Now, I am not a formulator. I know just enough to be dangerous because I work very closely with formulators, but I myself do not have the ability to be able to formulate in such a way that I would be able to make a product that would be effective. However, when I had my skin cream, I did work with a formulator who did have that expertise. And so I worked with her until we got the formula the way that it needed to be, and we were all good. But so you have to team up with someone who's knowledgeable. So Rhonda says, I'm not sure if you've already addressed this. I have 2 different textures in my hair and finding a product is challenging. Any recommendations? Oh my God, that is the worst. I do understand that. Usually you tailor whatever you want to the texture that you feel is more challenging. That's usually the route that you go, but to be honest with you, having a good professional who would be able to recommend something that is good for you is excellent. Now, Rhonda, I also know your hair because, looking at your hair and, what density you have. And so your hair is particularly probably more challenging because you have a lower density. And so you may see something on someone else and you're like, oh, I like that look, but that may not be achievable for you. But it doesn't mean that there aren't gorgeous styles that would be perfect for you. So I'll reach out to you and you and I can talk about that. There are tricks that you can do to make sure that you get what you need so you can look and feel beautiful. So Elaine says, as we do our own research as consumers, is there a place where we can submit our findings to your team? Oh yeah, so if you are a part of the Our Black Hair Matters movement, you can always submit stuff there. You can always submit stuff to me and I will make sure that it's just not my team. I want people who are a part of the movement to know information as well. So if you come up with some more information, by all means, please feel free to post it on the Our Black Hair Matters page, the Facebook page. Taria says, awesome. Thank you. And then you said, I think I have the same issue as well, Rhonda. Yeah. Rhonda has like really soft and, it's actually a nice quality of hair. And so, yeah, you just got to find what is conducive to your hair type and density. Awesome. All right. So it seems like that is all the questions. All right, we have all the questions answered. Thank you. Really appreciate you guys joining me. It's been fun. I absolutely love talking about this stuff. And I'm just chugging right along to make sure that you are fed information so that we can elevate the industry in one way or another. And so, as you already know, Our Black Hair Matters, and I want you to know that I am here for you. And until next time, as always, take care and love your hair. Bye-bye.